All right. Hey, everybody. We are back and we are starting a panel on the Insider's Trail. And so we're still talking about finding offbeat destinations and the best ways to experience a place. But now we're going to be hearing from local guides and kind of getting it from that perspective of the industry. And so today with us, we have Tammy Leland from Crooked Trails. Sorry.
Hello.
Hi, Tammy. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, then we also have Vincent Reese from Cobblestone Freeway Tours. We also have Emily Couillard from visit.org and Jason Kucharwi from Urban Adventures. And then we are also hoping that Nancy Blaine from Local Expeditions will be able to join us. She's having some technical difficulties, and so we hope that she'll be able to hop in here pretty soon. But before we get started, I would like to have everyone kind of introduce themselves and talk a little bit about being a guide and the businesses that you run. And so, Jason, why don't you start us off?
Yeah. Are you hearing me okay?
Yep.
Great. So I started as a guide in 1996 with an educational tour company, taking student groups to places like Ottawa, Quebec, New York, Chicago, Boston, et cetera, et cetera. And about 8 years ago, decided to get out of that industry and start my own walking tour company. And it was shortly after that, Urban Adventures contacted me and said, we really like what you do in Toronto. We want you to be our local partner in that city. So I created a couple of unique walking tour experiences for Urban Adventures. One of them is a beer tour. The other one is focused on bacon and pork. It's our food tour. And we do a Kensington Market and Chinatown tour with a focus on multiculturalism. And we've got a bunch of other tours in the works, but that's essentially what we do now.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's see, Tammy, let's hear from you.
Oh, you're cutting out. I didn't quite hear you there, Claire.
I'm sorry. Could you introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Tammy Leland. I'm one of the co-founders of Crooked Trails. We are a nonprofit travel company. Basically, we started because of what we just felt. We were both big travelers, and when I was in grad school, I'd done a lot of traveling and noticed I did a lot of offbeat travel, so I noticed a lot of exploitation of a lot of indigenous cultures around the world, and wanted to kind of create some way where we could either help give them a voice to say no to tourism or help them gain the tools that they needed to participate. And one of the things that we discovered was that a lot of them really wanted to meet travelers. They really wanted to be involved, but they didn't have the opportunities, either the financing generally or the education. And so we began basically as a consulting firm, helping communities get those tools that they needed. And once the communities were up and running, they pretty much were like, okay, we're ready. Now what do we do? And we thought, wow, what are we going to do now with all these great, full immersion programs? And so Crooked Trails sort of came out of that and started putting groups to go visit these experiences. It wasn't our intent in the first place, but realized that it was such a powerful tool bringing groups over to experience these, what we were calling community-based tourism at the time. And that's pretty much how we started actually running programs in countries around the world.
Wow, very, very interesting. Wonderful. Emily, how about you?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Emily from Quebec, Canada. I started to study tourism. It was about 4 years ago now, in sustainable tourism after traveling a different part of the world, and I was really interested by off the beaten path experiences. I've seen like the bad effect of massive tourism and didn't want to go this way. So started to do a certificate in sustainable tourism and then continued to a master degree, which brought me to Peru, where I lived for 3 years. I just came back 4 months ago. And then I was really interested in community-based tourism and solidarity tourism, working with nonprofits, same thing. At the same time, doing my research, I started to work with Visit.org as a volunteer at the beginning. And it was really meeting all the passion I had for tourism. So meaning working with nonprofit, developing different kind of tourism, really unique tours, and that will help these nonprofits to raise awareness and raise money for going through their program and continue their great work. So that's the way I started to work with Visit.org, initially working closely with different nonprofit and local communities in Peru. And then I started to be more involved with the whole network that we have, partner orgs around the world. So yeah, basically my passion was really to work in the nonprofit sectors and tourism sustainable way, and I found it through Visit.org, and I'm still continuing with them now.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for being here. That's great. How about you, Vincent?
Hi, can you guys all hear me? Okay, great. Well, everyone's got such a unique and interesting story. It's so, first of all, just a privilege to meet all of you and hear your stories. That I've got so many questions for each of you already, but I'll save that. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Victoria, British Columbia, just north of Tammy in Seattle. And but my grandfather came from Ukraine, and as a kid, I got involved in Ukrainian dance and culture. And when the Soviet Union collapsed, I had an opportunity to come as a student exchange person in '93. And then I kept coming back over the years to study folk dance and different things. And in the early 2000s, I had I was teaching folk dance to children, and I had like a whole network, and I had a group of parents that asked me if I could take them to Ukraine. At that time, tourism in Ukraine just didn't exist, but somehow we pulled it off, and it was just kind of a fun one-off. As the years went by, I would occasionally get these requests to bring tours to Ukraine. And as time went by, I realized that maybe this could be kind of fun. And it was a great summer job, and it was like a free trip for me once in a while. And then by 2011, we had so many people asking, we decided to start a little company. And the cobblestones of Ukraine and the old medieval cities, some of them are protected UNESCO World Heritage Sites and stuff like that, made me want to name the company after the cobblestones. So freeway for the travel, cobblestones for the old medieval cities. But the beginning of our tours, we were bringing folk dance groups, folk choirs, church groups, people of Ukrainian descent, that were scattered around the world, England, the States, South America, and Canada. And eventually, we started expanding. But what I noticed was that we would go to the cities and see all the major city sites. And for me, something was missing. So I started to try and drag the groups out into the country and into villages and into the mountains. And that's where I am right now, in the Carpathian Mountains of Ukraine. And since then, we've started these little mini sort of ecotourism projects where we work with villages and small communities to sort of show living culture, living tradition as much as possible where we can, and share that with people, because I felt that people could see cities really with a guidebook in some ways. But you can't necessarily get out into the country easily and make connections with the village people in the same way that you could. And that's what we help with. So we've been really working on that over the first few years. There was a war in Ukraine. It's still kind of ongoing in the Far East. And so we ended up expanding into the rest of Eastern Europe, which has been great. And we're having a hard time. And we're learning how to try and develop the same kind of feeling of eco, green, folk, ethno-tourism projects in some of the other places we visit, but it's been a blast. So that's a little bit about me and my company.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you, Vincent, for sharing. And it looks like Nancy Blaine from Local Expeditions is here with us now. Nancy, I'm so glad you could make it.
Sorry about that, everybody.
Yeah, wonderful. We're actually just doing our introductions. And so if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about Local Expeditions.
Great, I'm delighted to. So my name is Nancy Blaine, and almost 2 years ago, in September of 2015, I founded Local Expeditions. And Local Expeditions is a gig economy tour company. So the idea is that locals sign up via my website to design their own tours to show out-of-towners more neighborhoods, more of Brooklyn, less of the typical tourist sites that New York City has to offer. And then, of course, out-of-towners and travelers and also some locals will sign up and be taken around by those locals who created those tours. So it's very focused on that. And our big sustainable piece is that we give 5% of every tour to a local nonprofit of the guide's choice. And that's sort of the basic definition of our company.
Excellent, wonderful. Well, thank you all for being here, and I'm so excited to hear from your unique perspectives as to what offbeat travel is and the best way to see some of these amazing places around the world. And so let's jump right in. My first question is, what does offbeat travel mean to you? When you hear that word, what do you think of? And let's start with Emily.
Okay. So for me, it's really simple, no? It's really the authenticity of the experience and meeting local people. Everything goes through local people. When I think about my own experience traveling in different parts of the world, the most memorable experiences were when I met local people out of maybe the typical experiences that tourists are doing from the travel guides, or just random people that you can meet in the local market, at the restaurant, everyone in a destination that you can talk with. That is really my definition of offbeat travel, no? Of course, it goes with being adventurous, being curious about the destination, and yeah, that would be for me the offbeat travel.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. How about you?
Yeah, so for me, I guess it's a lot of things, but I think, everybody said it really well, is that it really is about getting away from the standard destinations of a country that define it, and finding out what else it has to offer, or not just a country, but it could be a place. So I often say, don't get on the internet, don't throw away the guidebook, let the locals guide you and tell you what you need to go see and visit, and you're going to find experiences that only locals can know about. And the only way you can find that is talking to people. So really, don't do somebody else's trip. Find your own through just talking to people.
Lovely, thank you. Let's see, Jason?
Yeah, so sorry, I lost the connection there. So we're on question one. What does offbeat travel mean to you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that offbeat travel really, I think everyone has hit on the main aspect of it. It's connecting with locals. So for me,
oh, looks like we might have lost him. Hopefully we'll get him back here in just a second. Vincent, now what does offbeat travel mean to you?
Oh, okay. I agree with Emily in a lot of ways, and Tammy as well. It's about getting in touch with people, and for me, we really try to get in touch with people and try and learn about their traditions and their culture, whether it's music, food, dance, spirituality, whatever it is. So we try to sort of arrange the unarrangeable, so make time for the impossible. I went to a folklore show I've been to many in different countries, and some of them are so tacky, and you could you could go to an opera theater and see the most famous show, and pay big money to go see it, and people clap and they have a nice time. And then you go to a village and some local people sing you one of their own songs, and it's 10 times more special, you know, than what you paid big money for in the theater. So for me, that's what off the beaten path is, or I try to say off the beaten tour, because I think in many ways, so many tour companies, and I think this is what is united this group of people, is so many tour companies are doing standard tours where it's bucket list tourism, where you say you get the selfie in front of that monument or that famous building, and those things are all great and fine and dandy. I'm okay with that. But beyond that, please go, like everyone's saying, engage with the locals and learn about their culture as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Jason, looks like you're back. What does Offbeat
I am back. I think that there's room in every kind of trip for an offbeat experience. I think you can check off the bucket list. You can go to Paris and see the Eiffel Tower. You can go to the Louvre. But I think there are opportunities to put the guidebook away and to wander or to connect with a local tour guide. All of my best travel experiences have been connecting with locals. And I think it's that aspect of authenticity that people are looking for when they go off the beaten path. They're looking for the real Spain. They're looking for the real Vietnam. So off the beaten path kind of trips or offbeat tours, I think people are looking for that authenticity, that they feel that the prepackaged sort of cookie cutter kinds of experiences are not going to give them the authentic experience. It's a fabricated Disneyland kind of experience where everyone does the same thing. You get the one photo that you take, in front of the landmark, and then you go home. I think that people are looking for this better connection to the place that they go, and I think that's what offbeat travel is about connecting with the place at a deeper level than what you would normally get on a prepackaged tour.
I love that. I love everything that everyone has said. And for me, I guess, having a normal tourist experience is, like getting that iconic postcard picture, and you come home and you show off the picture, you put it up on your fridge, and that's it. But when you go offbeat, when you're doing something with locals, when you're trying local food, when you're, having that authentic experience, you have a story to share, and you're excited to share it, and all the people around you want to hear that story, and they want to be inspired, and they, possibly want to go out and have a similar story. And I've always felt that was what travel was partly about, is coming home and sharing that experience. And I'm excited to hear about your experiences next. Could you each give an example?
Claire,
Yes?
You forgot me.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay, because I don't really have all that much to add, but I just want to make sure that you remember that I'm on here since I was so late. But yeah, I just want to say that I really agree with Jason, and being a kind of lifelong New Yorker, I always say to people, you got to go to the Empire State Building once, and you got to see the Statue of Liberty once, but when I'm flying into New York City and I see somebody straining out the window to see it, and I say, is this your first time? I always take out a pad and I'm like, okay, you got to check out this restaurant down in the West Village, and you gotta take one of the East River Ferry rides, because you get for $2.75 you're gonna get the best skyline. And that it kills me to think that people get stuck in Times Square. They see Times Square, the Empire State Building, the Statue of Liberty, and they think that's New York, and it's so not New York. There's so much to see, and I really think, as everybody said, it comes down to the people, and the people of New York have such a bad rap, but they're actually some of the warmest people in the world. And also, just really going to small local restaurants Small businesses are really important too. Our whole tour company is to bring people into small businesses, and all of that is really, to me, I mean, our whole company is based on off the beaten path tours. And I just have to say, I feel like tours get a really bad rap sometimes, because I've been on tours that have been deadly boring, and one of the reasons why I was going to talk about this later anyway, but what differentiates our company is that the tour guides themselves make this up, so it's based on their passion. And that's the basic thing. If you're being told to just reiterate something over and over for tourists, it doesn't come off, and the whole idea is that a local should show you around, because that's where all that, it's like, they know where the places are. So that's it.
That's excellent. Thank you, Nancy. And I'm sorry for skipping you.
That's okay.
So yeah, let's dive into experiences that, I guess, your first offbeat travel experience, and what inspired you to take that even further and create an entire company around that experience that you had. So Nancy, let's start with you this time.
Oh, thanks. All right. If you're not sick of hearing from me, I will go ahead. I've been thinking about this, and I think for me, it was, I love to do hiking and adventure kind of travel. And so quite a few years ago, I did the Inca Trail. And I know that the Inca Trail is sort of considered, typical, and a lot of tourists go on it. But a couple things made it special for me. First, we went off season. So I went with 4 people, and it was only the 4 of us on the whole tour. The other thing is in order to do the Inca Trail, you have to have a guide, and you have to have 2 porters per person. And originally I thought, I don't want to do that. I want to do the Inca Trail myself. But they do that because it is about sustainable culture. They realize that, they realize that they have a really important historical site there, and they want to give the locals the money. And I have to say, hiking for 3 days with somebody who is local, who can tell you about all the flora and the fauna, and who can sort of, at night, it was only the 4 of us. So I always suggest, go off season a little bit, not when it's crazy weather, but just at the very beginning of the season or the very end of the season. And, at night, we just hung around it was just the 4 of us. So we hung around with all of our guides and talked. And that's what made it such an amazingly, wonderful experience. And it made me realize that I don't mind guided travel if it is not rote memorization, but if it is a local experience.
Wonderful, wonderful. Emily?
Yep. Okay, so one of my first experience of the beaten path, I remember, and I will always remember, it was about 7 years ago. So I went to Barcelona to study for an exchange session at university. And then I spent the rest of the time, about 7 months in Europe. We bought a car that we changed like a homemade caravan. We had a mattress in it and we're sleeping in it, and travel all around Europe doing all the must-do also, but doing also really little places, really hard to find, it impossible to find if you're traveling the typical way, let's say. So then at some point we went up to Morocco with the car. We passed with the ferry, and we went to the very south of Morocco, and we met a local family. It was amazing because that family invited us to stay with them. I don't remember how we first get in touch with them, but still, we were not speaking Arabic, they were not speaking French, they were not speaking English, they were not speaking Spanish either. So there were no way to communicate really like the usual way with them, but still they invited us to stay at their house. We spent 1 week with them. The woman brought me everywhere in the woman world of the American culture, to the sauna. They put me in the hand, but I slept on the floor for 1 week. We ate all together in one bowl, with our hand. It was amazing. I felt so lucky to be there. That's the word I would say. And I will never forget that experience because they were so warm. They were so great to invite us in their family, in their intimity, this way without asking anything in return. It was just a really nice exchange with someone from this place. And after when I came back from my trip and I was talking about this wonderful moment I had in Morocco and everybody, here, a lot of people, not everybody, was just telling me, oh, but Morocco, no, there are bad thinking, let's say, about the American culture or the religion thing. So in Canada, and I was just saying, no, you cannot think this way. No, you have to go there and see it your way, yeah, and you will see that it's totally different. And you have to live it to understand, and you cannot just creating things that are not true. And I think that it makes really the difference and the importance of traveling and meeting people, because this way you can understand real things, and you cannot just uh, listen to things that maybe people from your place are telling, but they are not, they don't know actually, because they haven't been there. No? So yeah, I would say that that was my most memorable of it.
Wow, that really is memorable. That's amazing. Great. Tammy, how about you?
Yeah, so for me, it started a really long time ago. I don't want to say my age, but but maybe 29 years ago. I was a big mountain climber when I was young, and I never went anywhere around the world unless they had big mountains. And so that's changed because of how I see the world now. But I think the very first sort of what I would consider off the beaten path was in Peru. And it's funny to hear so many people mention Peru, but it certainly does touch your life. There's no doubt about it. And it's all about the local people. But my girlfriend and I went to do some big mountain ice climbing up in Peru, and you have to go where nobody else is going, and so you're trekking through villages. That's the nature of the country, and so you're passing through people's homes and their farms and their land, and we were relying on local people to trade with for potatoes and camp on their land, and they always came out and were so excited to just sit with us at our tent camps and help us boil potatoes, or and speak as my, at that time my Spanish was not as good as it is now, and just hang out and pantomime or whatever, as everybody's experienced using. Sometimes when you can't use the same language, you actually have a better experience. And we'd go and we'd stay on someone's land, and then we'd go up and climb this mountain, and we'd come back through their property, and they would run out, and they wanted to know, they were happy we were safe, and they were happy that to see us again, and they'd already prepared a big meal, and there's no other, I don't think in that 8 weeks I spent in Peru, I even went to Machu Picchu the very first time I went, and I would meet. We barely met any other travelers, but when we did, they'd say, "Did you go here? Did you go here?" And we were like, "No," but we just lived with this family, and it was so amazing. And I remember that more than I remember the climbing itself. I remember the people, and I have this picture of these 10 little kids that came and just squatted by our campsite for 2 days and just giggled and played with us. And it's still on my wall, and it's the only picture I have on my wall. This was probably 29 years ago, and for sure I've never traveled. I've just traveled that way ever since. And it's very profound when you have the opportunity to just, like you said, hang with the people. And when you explain your experiences, people always go, "Wow, you always have the best experiences," but everybody can have that experience.
Wow, thank you for sharing. That's incredible. Jason, you want to go next?
Sure. I honestly, I put a lot of thought into it. I couldn't think of my first offbeat trip. A lot of the traveling that I do is built around checking off that bucket list. Either I'm working as a tour guide, taking people to places to go and check those lists off, or when I go and travel, I want to see the iconic landscape. I want to see the landmarks, but I always make time in my travels to go off the beaten path. I make time in my itinerary, whether I'm planning a trip for myself or for someone else, just to have free time and to use that time to go and explore. I used to live in Japan. I taught English, and I chose a city in the north part of Japan, well away from Tokyo, well away from any other tourists, because I was looking for a more authentic experience and looking for a place with good snow for snowboarding. Another long travel experience I had was with the Canadian Forces in Afghanistan. I was a civilian working with the military. So I tend to plan my travel around going to places that people wouldn't normally go. I don't think of it as offbeat. I just think of it as going somewhere to learn and to experience. I'm all for going to the iconic places, but I think what it comes down to with offbeat travel is connecting with local people and trying to understand and connect with the culture and the country and the place that you are as much as you can.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jason. And Vincent, how about you?
There, turned on the microphone. Yeah, you know, you guys all got me thinking of, I also made a trip to Peru one time and was very disappointed not to be able to go on the Inca Trail. I was so lucky it was fully booked and I didn't get to go on it. And I ended up doing the Lares Trek, and maybe some of you know of it. And it took us exactly way off into people's homes and villages and through places where I didn't see. On day 2 or 3, we saw some tourists over far off in the distance somewhere. And I think I've done a couple other things. I rode a bicycle across Australia from Perth to Sydney. I did things like on Vancouver Island. We did some portaging and canoeing off into the I was going to say jungle, but the rainforest. And I think the idea that really has been in my soul, and it's probably somewhere deep within every human, is this need to sort of like go off in the direction of that path, not knowing where that path goes, and getting away from civilization a little bit, and sort of not being able to use your cell phone, not being able to know what's going to happen, and just be okay with it, and be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think that's hard for a lot of us when we spend most of our lives in the city. We spend so much time, going about our daily lives, keeping up with the Joneses. And so I think that need to be away from civilization in an environment where your imagination can let go. And for me, my imagination really takes off when I'm in places where I like to think of what was it like for people before civilization. My grandparents, my great-grandparents, the medieval times or whatever. In university, I took some classes in cultural anthropology, and we looked at indigenous cultures all around the world. And I didn't do very good in the course, but it was still my favorite course because it was so fascinating for my imagination. So my company and my imagination collide with my family's history, which is my grandfather and my grandmother on that one side of the family came from Ukraine. And so when I started traveling to Ukraine in the 90s, my imagination was taking me, to this place where what was my ancestors' life like? And I think for people that are, going to Ireland or, Peru or Mongolia or outback Australia, you go to places where you're going to connect with people that kind of remind you of a life that you may not have ever had, or that's only in your imagination. So for me, some of those places like, camping on Vancouver Island or hiking in Peru, mostly, of course, in Ukraine, in the Carpathian Mountains. One of my first experiences was being dumped off and given a map and trying to meet somewhere in 3 days. And not speaking the language at the time, we were lost and we had so much fun. And those are the memories. As a tour guide and as a travel leader, that's not exactly a money-making model to drop people off and let them go on their own. But
lets you charge for the map.
But within a tour, I think if you can try and give people that opportunity to let their imagination loose, that's the thing for me.
That's excellent. Wow, thank you all for sharing, and it's all so exciting. I do want to get into some takeaways for viewers, and what are some baby steps, ways to start getting into that offbeat travel experience? We mentioned connecting with locals. Maybe we can talk about some good ways of doing that. And then also, of course, always booking tours. Sometimes you can find those great local businesses that are running tours, and that could be a really great way of connecting with that place as well. But I'm interested to hear your tips on ways of seeing these really special places. And so let's start again with Nancy.
Oh, thank you. So I am lucky that I live in such an international city, and in fact, I am a member of the Brooklyn Park Slope Food Co-op, and that is probably the most international place in the world that I've ever been. And I make a point of every time I'm a checkout person on my food co-op shift, and every time everybody that comes through, I ask them where they're from, and I ask them basically, if I only had a day in your city, what would be the big things that you would make sure that I would do? And often they will actually tell you to go to pretty touristy spots. So then you have to kind of dig a little bit further and say, but what do you do? What did you do when you were growing up there? What, so for me, it's always check in with somebody literally before you go. Because one of the best trips I ever took was to Cornwall, England. And I had a colleague who grew up in Cornwall, and she sent me to places where I was completely alone with ancient, with ancient stone, beautiful, beautiful places that I was completely alone in because she told me where to go. So that's what I say, is just make sure you find somebody who lives there and ask them.
Great, good advice, excellent. Emily, how about you?
Yeah, so basically try to learn the basic of the local language is really important, even if, as my example before, it's not necessary to get a really amazing experience, but still just to learn thank you, hello. No, this is really useful. Something also that I've done a lot in the past, not so much lastly, but I was doing a lot of couch surfing. So it's coming back to the same idea of connecting with local people. So these travel lovers, basically people on couchsurfing are usually travelers on standby, let's say. So they are going to tell you, share some tips with you of where to go in their own city, and just spend good time together and with local people. So this is also a good tip to discover a city by local. And I would say, like last advice, try local food. It's always go to local market, talk with people in the market. Based on my experience living in Peru, Peru is really unique also for the food. They are Peruvian are in love with their food. They are proud of it, and it's okay because it's so true that Peruvian food is so great. Going to local market is an amazing way also to get to know the local culture and to connect with people.
Wonderful, wonderful. And tomorrow we'll be focusing all about food. That's one of the best ways, I think, of connecting with locals, because food is such a big part of our a big part of our psyche and our makeup, right? So let's see here, Tammy, what suggestions do you have? Oh, we might have lost Tammy. Jason, how about you?
Yeah, well, I'm a partner with Urban Adventures, and Urban Adventures has partners in about 140 cities around the world. So every Urban Adventure partner is a local tour operator and is passionate, completely in love with their city and eager to share it with others. So what I would do, and as a tour guide, in order to find authentic experiences, would be to find a local tour company that hires and employs locals with an emphasis on connecting visitors to the destination. So Urban Adventures, I have done Urban Adventures in cities around the world, and the guides are just amazing resources. People that visit Toronto and take a tour with my company at the end of their stay often say, I wish I had done this on day one. Because after the tour, they usually grab the guide and ask them, like, what are the things I should be doing? And they realize they've run out of time. So I would say the first thing you should do in any destination that you visit is connect with a local tour company, take a walking tour, whether it's one of the free tours or an urban adventure or anything like that. And then afterwards, grab the guide, offer to buy them coffee, and basically interview them. That tends to be what I do. And being a tour guide myself, it's pretty easy to get them to come with me and have a beer or have a coffee, because we can talk shop, we can talk about the industry, but really I'm probing them for information about what I should be doing next. And if you have a local expert right there in front of you that is willing to share their knowledge with you, that's the best way to find the truly authentic local experience.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And that's something that my husband and I have learned as well, is to book the local walking tour the first or second day that we're there. Definitely, because then
first thing, and then kidnap the guide.
Exactly. Let's go get a cup of coffee or a beer and let's learn all about this place.
That's right.
That's awesome. Excellent. Vincent, what are some tips that you have?
Well, I like what everybody's saying about the urban adventures and doing the local guide and getting the orientation and kind of learning about what's going on in the city. For my company, what I recommend from Cobblestone Freeway Tours, we always try to follow that cobblestone road out of the city and get out into a rural setting. So if possible, of course, see the cities, of course, but also if you want to really understand the culture of a country, very often the national culture of a country comes from the rural people, the folk traditions and stuff like that. So if you can get out into a small rural community and find a pension, what do they call them, pensiones or bed and breakfast, or a small, stay in one of those, get off into some small town and spend a few days hanging out. Then you're really with the locals. But the locals of a village or a small town are a totally different experience than the locals of a city. They're both fascinating, and they will both give you a different angle on the culture that you're visiting in a country. I mean, for all of you who have been to Peru, if you only saw Lima, that's not Peru, right? So I always tell people when we're in Eastern Europe, and we do Ukraine mostly, but also Croatia. And as much as Dubrovnik is beautiful, you got to get off into the other parts of Croatia. And Kiev is beautiful. Get into the smaller villages in the Carpathian Mountains. And, Krakow is beautiful, but go off into some small Polish village as well. That's what I recommend to get the local experience. Get out of the city as well. And just, pick some place that is on the map and go spend a few days there.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you. It does look like we lost Tammy. Hopefully she'll be able to pop back in here in a second. But we do only have a few minutes left, and I would like to finish with the question of how do you personally, as guides, guarantee the authentic experience for your visitors? What are some strategies that you've implemented, and what are some things that you do to make sure that they really are getting the real deal? Nancy.
Oh, great. So I wrote this down, so I'll be looking at my notes. For us at Local Expeditions, I think the main thing is, can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Our main thing is we explore neighborhoods. So we really go into neighborhoods. We also really make a point of going into small businesses. And we also have small groups that we travel with. We never have more than 10 people on any of our tours. And that's really important to make it a more intimate experience, I think, and also to not have too much negative impact on the neighborhoods. And the other thing, a thing that I really love about the tours that we do, is that we use public transportation. And public transportation is the kind of thing that can be really hard in a big city. And it's one of the best ways to get around usually. And certainly in New York, we have an amazing subway system, but it's terrifying. I mean, I even have a tour that's just based on the subway system. So, those are sort of the main things that we do. And also, of course, local restaurants. Every place that we take people are small local places, and they're very much off the beaten path. So that's how we try to give a really authentic experience to folks.
Wonderful. I love how you mentioned public transportation. And that's, for me, that's some of the best ways to experience that local place is through public transportation, taking the tuk-tuk, taking, the metro, whatever the locals are using.
Right.
But yeah, I remember the first time I went to New York, I wound up getting on the wrong train and going all the way down, to this place I didn't even know existed
Right.
in New York, and I had quite the adventure the rest of the day. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. Let's see, Emily, how about you?
Yeah, so at Visit.org right now, part of my work is really to build the experience with the organizations that we're working with. So at this moment, we are partnering with about 600 organizations in 70 countries. And what make it really unique and really great, in my opinion, about Visit.org is that each organization has a very unique mission, very unique history, everything that they use to build their own itinerary that we are putting on Visit.org. So we are working with organizations that are really used to tourism, that are already an itinerary and an activity, and others that we are starting 2.0 with them, building the whole itinerary with them, and then starting to promote this organization or community to the whole world, let's say. So part of my work is really, what make it really amazing for me is to help them to build that itinerary. So the experience that we have are unique to them also at the same time, because we have organizations really small that have little capacity, let's say, to host the tourists. So it's based on their capacity also what they are going to offer. And for the travelers that are choosing an experience at Visit.org, it makes it really unique because the activity is based on what they are. It's based on their mission and their program. For instance, in Mexico, we partner with an organization called Todo Accesible. It's an organization that gives disabled people the possibility to dive in the sea. At the beginning, when first we contact that organization, they told the guy, the contact person told me, but why tourists would be interested in our organization? We are not doing it for visitors, no? But for me, it's really what it means to do offbeat travel, is to go in those places or talking with people, with organizations in that case, that are not used to receive tourists, but as all the knowledge about what they are doing and can be really passionate about what they are doing and explain it to tourists. So right now, this organization, for instance, they are offering a regular diving activity to travelers, and with the money that they are raising through these touristic activities, they can continue their program with disabled people. So for me, it's really enriching also at the same time to be part of this, because I know that every tours that we sell at Visit.org, it goes back to the local communities and allow this organization to continue their great work with their beneficiary in that case. So, and the great thing is that every organization is unique. We have organization working in the environment, other with people, with kids, everything, no? And even if at the beginning they are not thinking that it's something fitting for the tourism industry, we are finding the way to make it a great experience for international travelers. So yeah.
Wow, thank you. And that's something I've always loved about Visit.org too, is working with so many different NGOs and seeing the trips that they come up with. And so that is a really great resource to look up as well. And so thank you for sharing that. Jason, what are some ideas that you have?
Yeah, so the question, what are the things we do to guarantee an authentic experience for travelers? For me, with my team of guides in Toronto, and I can probably speak on behalf of all the Urban Adventures partners, we don't really have a script. So I've actually encountered people on my tours who come up to me and say like, oh, I'm a tour guide. I'd love to work with you. All you need to do is send me your script and I'll learn that and I'll be a great guide for you. And I'm like, our guides just know things. Like we don't have anything that we memorize and then recite. So with us, the way that we guarantee an authentic experience is every guide does our tours differently. So the Beer Makes History Better tour that we do in Toronto, it's our most popular tour. The focus is on beer and history, but every guide brings a different aspect to it. So we have one of our guides is the authority on beer history in Ontario. He's written 2 books on the history of beer in Ontario. We have other guides who are brewers, so they come at it from a different aspect. We have other guides who are just really, really into Toronto and Toronto history. So every tour that you do, if you have a different guide, you'll have a similar experience. You go to the same places, but it's very different. I'm living in Ho Chi Minh City right now. You probably can't tell. But I've taken an urban adventure here twice. The same tour, twice. It was a night street food tour. And I had 2 different guides, and we went to completely different places. So even here in Ho Chi Minh City, where a lot of the tours are very cookie cutter, Urban Adventures has said to the tour guides, take your guests where you think they will enjoy the food. And so they kind of size up the group and they go, okay, I think this group would probably like going here and here and here, and I know this food is good and I want to do that. So there's the freedom. The guide is given freedom to basically deliver an experience that feels less like a tour and more like you're with a new friend who's showing you around. So it's the idea, and that's the best compliment that I've ever received, is after a tour, people saying to me, you know, this didn't really feel like a tour. It just felt like we were hanging out. And that's the kind of feedback that tells me that I've nailed it and I've done the job that I set out to do, connecting visitors with the place to make them feel like they're a part of it now.
Excellent. Wow. I love that.
So go off script. No script.
No script. Okay. So when looking for local tours, ask them, do you go by a script?
Pass.
And if they don't,
no script.
That might
Awesome.
be a good sign. All right. We do just have a few more minutes, but I'd love to hear from Vincent. What do you have to say about this topic?
Well, I like all the ideas. One thing we like to do at Cobblestone Freeway is try to include local folk or music performances or song or dance or so during meals, during the dinners. So there's so many great tours that other tour companies are doing, and we partner with the local companies in every city that we visit. But then when we have our dinners or our gatherings in the evening, so many tour companies have dinner and then free time and then see you tomorrow. So, or they'll do a city tour and then free time, see you tomorrow. And so we try to like have a dinner, but then as part of the dinner, which includes we try to go to a restaurant that will offer local food samplings, you know, to give a sense of the cuisine of the culture that you're visiting, and then include some local music if possible. And it's harder than I thought it would be to find a local traditional cultural music band that's not kitschy, that's not the typical touristy one. And so often when I try to find one, someone says, oh, yeah, I know just the group for you. And it turns out to be just horrible, right? And they play Simon and Garfunkel for us, which I love Simon and Garfunkel, but it's not what I wanted to hear when I traveled to, yeah. So that's been a challenge and a fun challenge because I could just listen to different music from all around the world, and sometimes they get you up and they teach you some of their local folk dances, and it doesn't have to be a rowdy party, but it just makes it for a really interesting an event. And back to my, idea to get out of the cities. If you do that same thing out in the country, often it'll be the people that are cooking for you and the people that you're living with are also the people that are playing and singing and dancing with you as well. So that's our shtick that we are angling at from our company, is trying to engage with the traditional folk culture of the nation or even of the subculture of the country that we're visiting.
Wow, so many special experiences and so many special ways of viewing the world. Thank you all so much for being here. I feel like we learned so much during this panel and have so many good ideas on how to get out there and see the real world and get the real experiences no matter where we go. And so thank you all. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us all. It was nice meeting you all.
Nice meeting you all.
Likewise. Let's exchange emails.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Claire.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Thanks.
And so for our viewers, we're actually going to start going on a virtual tour today. And we're going to go with Ron Motter in downtown Las Vegas. And so that'll actually be starting up in 5 minutes. We are posting his YouTube channel in this chat window. And so if you go to his YouTube channel, he will take us on a lovely tour. We're going to see some behind the scenes stuff, some really cool places. I'm hoping he'll take us to Container Park, which is my favorite place in downtown, but I'm sure he has so many more fun places to show us. So we're going to start there, and then we're going to visit places like Tanzania, Australia, Mexico City, Tuscany, Rajasthan. I'm so excited for the rest of this day. And so come along with us. Thank you guys. We'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
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 Good day.